Hey everybody, I'm Invisiblekatana, and this is the second episode in my video game photography series where I discuss my random nerdy thoughts on the blending of two forms of art. Now, if you haven't seen my first episode yet, that's fine because none of these really need to be in a certain order anyway, but I will be bringing up small elements from the previous episode, so if you want to check that out first, there's a link in the description. Now, jumping right into the focus of this episode, like the title says, I'll be talking about video game cutscenes and video game photography, and simply put, they're an odd mash. You have video game photography as a great outlet for creativity, whether it's through photo modes or just positioning the camera, but you also have the storytelling of video game cutscenes that give every position and frame that you see to every other person that plays the game as well, at least in most cases, which we'll get to in a second. But the first thing I want to talk about is where video game photography stands in conjunction with video game cutscenes. The big thing that I notice with video game photography is that some groups don't like to include shots of cutscenes as a part of their collections, and while I see where people are coming from, it becomes one of the new variables of video game photography as games begin to advance to the point where they mimic the real world. With varying weather patterns and different times of day, the line between static repeating cutscenes and dynamic in-game events begins to blur. Some cutscenes are as simple as near automata's and just add in nearly clear bars, which make my pictures harder to get by the way, but games like Horizon Zero Dawn have dynamic cutscenes that take place in the world as you get to them. You can start a cutscene and it could be day, night, raining, or even snowing, and while those are interesting differences for the background that you see, the motions of the characters and the camera angles are set in stone. Now the big question is, where do we draw the line, if we can at all, between video game photography and a replicated still of set in stone elements of our games? I wanted to pose this question to you all early on in this video because unlike my last one, I don't have a definitive stance on what I think is right or wrong or where a line, if any, should be drawn. And that's mostly because I don't believe there's a certain way to perform video game photography, just personal preference on what you like to see. I take shots of cutscenes myself, and as of late I've made sure to note that the shot was a cutscene compared to when I first started, but I also don't think that anyone is trying to steal if they don't. I doubt there's ever any real sense of malice, and in all likeliness, most people just got a great shot in a cutscene like they do throughout the rest of the game. And my take on video game photography as a whole is that we should capture every perfect glance or every perfect smile we like anyway. We're not instantly claiming something as our own unique moment like we do with real-world photography. I feel like there's a greater sense of community compared to real-world photos due to the celebration of a work that we all purchased. Plus, in most cases, it's insanely obvious when you're looking at a cutscene shot, so you can call out liars pretty quick. Although games like Horizon Zero Dawn can make it a challenge due to its photo mode allowing for such detailed shots in tandem with the variety already given off by the game itself. Which brings me back to my point from earlier in the video, cutscenes that don't give the same thing to every single player. If you look at games like Horizon Zero Dawn, I mentioned that the character movements and camera angles stay the same, but like much of my time with the older Assassin's Creed games, the idea behind my photography was to capture a unique look in a common situation. This goal of style versus moment causes me to change outfits at random even outside of cutscenes based on characters in the world and the outfits that I like. These minute changes are part of what makes video game photography of cutscenes special in my opinion, but of course the examples I showed aren't exactly common across the board, taking us back to the more normal cutscenes of games like Nier Automata, which in its own right does have a degree of individual control as the characters can sometimes move and the camera can sometimes be shifted, but there are also more classic style cutscenes where the player has no control whatsoever. Ultimately, I say the idea of using video game photography for cutscenes is up to the individual. I just wanted to make a video to put a really quick focus on this gray area of using photography around scenes that don't drastically change. I know for some people it matters, for some people it doesn't, and of course, like I said, this was really just an opinion-based thing to really know what you guys think about it. I just wanted to touch on this weird little middle ground because as games are advancing, they change so much what a cutscene used to be. We've had other games like, I could even reference Half-Life and Half-Life 2, where technically they aren't cutscenes, but the dialogue stays the same, the location is technically the same, the movements can be different because you control the character, so there are a lot of different variations on what a cutscene is or is not, and so that of course changes what photography is and is not within that certain context. So of course I would love to know what you guys think about this concept. For whatever reason, I didn't realize this until I was recording today, so this is my totally unscripted ending that I seem to have at the end of these videos. For some reason, I never finished the script. I thought I did that like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, oh man, my job's just keeping me away from, recording this and putting it out. And then as I'm going through recording the episode today, I'm like, oh, I never even finished my conclusion. I wrote the ultimately part, and then I had some amazing example apparently of real world photography where the setting never changes, but something's different. I don't know what it is now, so sorry. If you have an example of real world photography where seemingly it never changes, but everyone can get a different picture, I would love to know what examples you guys have. I don't think it was monuments or anything like that. It wasn't like the Leaning Tower of Pizza where everybody's, like Power Rangers and stuff. So I don't remember what I was gonna put, but apparently I had some great example of like, this is a real world idea that connects to cutscenes in video games. So with this video already being super late, I'm just letting you guys know that is exactly what happened. So super random ending. I don't know what I was going to use for my real world example. If you guys have one though, please put it down in the comment section below, because it might help me figure it out. I'm going to be losing my mind as I'm editing this, just trying to remember what in the world was that example. So hopefully you guys are probably seeing a picture. I highly doubt it, but maybe I figured it out while editing and it was like, oh crap, here's an example. So I doubt it, but I would love to know your real world examples of what you think ties into cutscenes in video games. And of course, the main point of this video itself is to know what you guys think about doing video game photography revolving around cutscenes. Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? Do you think people should at least note when they're taking a picture of a cutscene? Like I said, for some games, it's very obvious. For other games, it might not be so obvious. So I would love to know your thoughts on that. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.